Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the WCPO High School Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Dyer. Well, here we are. High school football is back, and we are ready to tackle 66 games this weekend across the tri-state with Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana, and we're going to get right into it. A little bit later on, you're going to hear from scoutingohio.com director Mark Porter, who's also a recruiting analyst for bucknuts.com. He's going to talk about why Southwest Ohio has been so crucial to the Ohio State University football recruiting efforts. But first, I'm going to talk to OHSA Senior Director of Media Relations, Tim Streed, about why he thinks the officiating concerns will be addressed here sometime soon with a new partnership the state governing body is going to have with RefPrep. But before we get to that, I want to remind everybody this High School Insider podcast is presented by our local Chick-fil-A restaurants, where the winning play is always chicken. Download the app for easy ordering. And as I mentioned, I had a conversation earlier this week with OHSA Senior Director of Media Relations, Tim Streed. We discussed a number of topics as the school year begins, including officiating concerns, why Canton may be a long-term solution for the state football final, and many other considerations as the school year gets going. Well, Tim, thanks for taking a few minutes here and embarking upon another school year. Remind me again, what year is this for you now at the OHSA as you embark on this 22-23 school year?
Good to be with you, Mike. Yeah, I'm going into my 15th year, which is hard to believe, but never gets old, and excited for the start of another school year.
Well, great. Well, I always appreciate the conversation, and as always, plenty of topics to talk about, but I want to start with fall sports. Obviously, week one of high school football is upon us. 712 schools around the state of Ohio looking to play 11-man football, and season gets started officially Thursday night around here in Greater Cincinnati with a couple games, and then everything obviously in full Friday night mode on the 19th. But tell me about the anticipation of high school football season for you there and everybody in the OHSA office, and how much everybody's looking forward to it around the state.
Sure. Yeah. And it's not cliche that we really do get excited for the start of the football season, but all of our fall sports we get excited for. But a lot of us will be out at a game on Friday night. I know I will take my boys with me, and we'll see a high school football game. So we'll love doing that. And really the anticipation starts back in probably around mid-July, just with our office ramping up for the start of practice on August 1st. So there's a lot that starts going into motion even before practice starts. But then once we get to August 1st, and for me personally, once I start seeing a lot of the pictures and videos of teams practicing, all the things, they start again. A lot of this is new for new incoming high school players, new starters, schools either moving up a division or they're in a new conference. Everything gets born again. Sometimes I look at it that way with the start of football in the fall. So. And with the cool temperatures this week, it starts to feel like it too. So I'm happy for that. But we do get excited for sure. And the season starts a week earlier. This is a few years now that we've started the season a week earlier. So it sometimes it hits you fast, but we're ready here. I know our schools are ready, especially since they got to get their 5-day acclimatization period done at the end of July. I've heard a lot of good feedback about that. So starting August 1st, they were ready to put the pads on.
I know you mentioned 15 years there at the OHSA. I know you're an Ohio native and everything, but just still high school football in this state. We hear about, Florida and Texas and California. And I think sometimes we don't understand, or maybe we take it for granted how good we have it here in Ohio. But people on the outside may not realize, just the amount of teams, the great talent across the board each and every season, and through 7 divisions. I mean, what impresses you each and every year when you watch the game and see the interest again from the communities around the state?
Well, you're right, Mike. I think a lot of people in Ohio don't realize those things that you just mentioned. Ohio is the 4th largest state in the country in terms of high school sports. I mean, a lot of people are blown away by that. But I always think about that when I go to either our national conference or our Midwest conference, and other states in the Midwest will ask us, what about this? How do you do that? I see you're doing this now. So Ohio, a lot of people don't really think of it this way, but Ohio is a leader in a lot of the things we do. In 2013, our competitive balance proposal passed. other states around us have taken some bits and pieces of that and used it for their own. So Ohio definitely is looked to in some areas that other states look at what we're doing. We have more schools playing football than any other state in the Big Ten, other than California now, which will happen here soon. But we just have a large number of schools. As you mentioned, we have 712 schools playing 11-man football. There's a handful that play 8-man too, which they're certainly permitted to do. We don't have a tournament for 8-man football, but there are certainly some schools that do that. But yeah, when you look at college football across Ohio, that's a reflection of the talent we have in the state at the high school level. But it impresses us every year, and then you see that displayed at the next level too. So we focus on the high school, but we certainly recognize and appreciate that the talent is here. That goes on to the next level, both on Saturdays and Sundays.
Well, you wouldn't have Friday Night Lights without officials, Tim, and obviously you know that very well. And this is not a new storyline for anybody who's followed Ohio high school sports. It doesn't matter if it's football or any of the other sports that are sanctioned within the state. But the number of officials have been decreasing in a lot of sports. And here locally, I know in Greater Cincinnati, I was just speaking with a couple of officials over the weekend, and they were mentioning estimates of 20 to 25% reduction from a year ago, and really not any new members taking classes. I have a contact up in Northeast Ohio. They were saying, maybe about 10% there. And we heard about in the news about a boycott that was averted, a potential boycott that was averted in the greater Cleveland area last week. So again, due to pay increases. But I guess what's the OHSA stance on hearing some of these numbers, and how does the membership try to encourage officials to help out on these Friday nights?
Well, we are very concerned about the number of officials across the state in a lot of our sports. And in some parts of the state, thankfully, football numbers of officials are okay in some parts of the state. But I'll never pass up a chance to certainly encourage anyone who is even a little interested in exploring becoming an official, or you want to see what it's like to take the class. We offer online classes now through Ref Prep, which we're announcing that partnership here soon. So you can take an officiating class from your own home. So that's the first step. But like I said, luckily, football and in a lot of parts of the state, we're doing okay in terms of numbers. But we have some sports, specifically volleyball and soccer and cross country, which also goes with track and field and lacrosse. Boy, we are desperately low in the number of officials we have. So, there's so many people that grow up playing soccer, maybe played soccer when they were younger. If you know a little bit about the game and you want to get back involved, please go to ohsa.org and set yourself up with a profile to become registered for a class. And that's where it starts. But the thing that's really unfortunate with the low number of officials is what we see happen is the JV games may get canceled, the freshman games, the junior high games. Those are the first ones to suffer because the varsity games are always going to get filled first. We want to make sure that the varsity games are taken care of with officials. But then if there's a JV game on a Tuesday night, let's talk baseball or softball. If the varsity officials are all doing the games and there's no one to do the JV game, then the JV game just doesn't happen. And that is where kids get to play. That's where they learn the game. So it's very concerning. But we're hoping that our new partnership with Ref Prep will get more people signed up to take the class. That will lead to more licensed officials. So we hope that help is on the way.
And will there be more information forthcoming about that partnership then, Tim?
Absolutely right. In fact, it'll be later this week, early next week. We'll have an official announcement on Ref Prep. And the neat thing too is a lot of our schools are already incorporating officiating classes into their school for students. And a lot of schools, they can get a credit for doing that. So the thing that we talk about all the time is it's instant employability. You can get your license, you can go out and start working games and earning money. So we really try to encourage our schools. That's a big part of the Ref Prep program, is that it's online, and you can get a teacher that can set up a class with this online curriculum. And there you go. Your students are going to get exposed to officiating. They can move toward getting licensed. They can start working games. So that's our goal. So many of our schools do, they have so many sports that the kids play, and they're interested in that. Well, if we can capture them, that interest when they're young, get them exposed to officiating, we really think that could be the solution to get a larger pool of officials moving forward to replace the ones that are retiring, are giving it up. As you mentioned, our numbers are declining. So we need a good pool of people who are going to replace them moving forward.
Well, one aspect of high school football that doesn't need assistance is in the computer points ratings and the schedules. And you have a treasure trove of information, all provided by Joe Idle. Anybody who's covered high school football or follows high school football should be aware of Joe's website, and plan to speak with him this week. And I know he provides the information. I don't know, how many years has that been going now that he's been the official provider of information for the OHSA team?
I bet, Mike, it's around 8 or 9 where he has been our computer programmer for the computer results. So we rely on him a lot in the fall, that's for sure.
I mean, tell us just how instrumental he has been in providing this great game. And, there's so much fan interest. I know the playoff system has changed, obviously, over the past couple of years, and we all know that. But really, to see a potential first or second round matchup, you go to Joe's website, and you can get all the prognostications and all the numbers right there. So how important has he been to the game of high school football here?
Well, he has taken our computer formula and our computer ratings and made them foolproof, basically. He is such a brilliant mind that he takes all those scores every Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night. They instantly go into his computer, and it's constantly running all of the computer points. It's 2 parts. The first part is having the formula in place and knowing what division each school is in. But then the second part is getting the final scores. And he has his method of doing that on a Thursday night, on a Friday night, on Saturday, that is almost in real time. So he is so good at that. Prior to Joe, we had an internal program where we fed in the scores, getting those from our member schools, and that took a day or two. And so we didn't have the computer ratings until Tuesday morning, and that's when I would then send them out Tuesday afternoon to our website and to our media list. Now I still do that, but I get the reports from Joe, and but people, sometimes it's not breaking news, because you can go on to joeidle.com on a Sunday afternoon and see what happened, and see where all the computer points are, and see who's already clinched a playoff spot, all those things. So we're really blessed to have Joe in Ohio. And like I say all the time, I want to make sure he has adequate security when he goes to the grocery store in late October. So, but no, we're really blessed to have Joe, and he just does a great job.
I know it's only week 1, but remind everybody is kind of look toward the end of the regular season into the playoffs, what the format is like, what nights everybody plays, and how that will all go as far as hosting playoff games.
Sure. Well, we start this week is week 1, and then Saturday, October 22nd is the end of the regular season. Hard to believe it ends in October, but it does. So on Sunday, October 23rd, we will announce the final computer ratings, and that then basically lays out who plays who in the first round. So this is a bit of a change, but on the first and second rounds of the playoffs, so that's the first round and then the regional quarterfinals, the better seeded team will host those games on Friday nights. So the first 2 rounds, all of our playoff games are on Friday night. That's Friday, October 28th, and Friday, November 4th. So that's a lot of games. Back in that first round, we have 224 playoff games all on Friday night. That's at the better seeded teams field. That's the way it is for the second round on November 4th. And then when we get to the regional semifinals, that's November 11th and 12th. That's when we move to region or to a neutral sites. And when we go to neutral sites, divisions 1, 2, 3, and 5 play on Friday nights, and divisions 4, 6, and 7 play on Saturday nights. So we'll have some neutral sites that host a game on Friday and Saturday. But that's how we'll do it for the regional semis, regional finals, and then, of course, the state semifinals are Thanksgiving weekend. And then the state championships, December 1st, 2nd, 3rd in Canton, which I know that's a bit of a drive from Cincinnati. We hear that from any Cincinnati
I've never heard that before, Tim. That's
no, never heard that. But certainly we just have a great home in Canton with the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I'm sure a lot of people watched Enshrinement Weekend and the NFL game on Thursday night in early August. So we have a great home in Canton. Ohio is very blessed to have the Pro Football Hall of Fame right here in our state. And they do a great job hosting. And I think anyone who's been there, whether it's a team or a fan or a coaching staff from a Cincinnati school that went up to watch some games, will tell you that it's a special place to be. And I think the finals will be there for a long time.
Second year of a 3-year contract. I was just going to ask you if you think Canton would be a future long-time potential host.
I think they will. And, back in the 80s when we were at Ohio Stadium, some people thought they'd never leave the shoe. But we had to leave when they put in natural grass. And we just found a really good home in Canton. They just have embraced the games. We were back at Ohio State in 2014, 15, and 16 for those 3 years. And that was largely due to Jim Tressel really wanting the games back at Ohio State. And Coach Tressel, along with the Columbus Sports Commission, made that happen. And we were there for 3 years. We still continue to talk to Ohio State from time to time about football and a lot of sports. But I don't see right now a push coming from Ohio State to host the games in the near future. That could change. Certainly we're always talking to a lot of different partners and potential partners, but if I had to guess, I think that Canton is going to have the games probably for the next cycle as well.
Before I let you go, Tim, I know we're just right at the start of the fall sports season, obviously, but you have a couple of sports in girls wrestling in the winter and obviously boys volleyball in the spring that are going to be added to the OHSA schedule officially this school year. So tell us a little bit about each one of those and maybe the postseason outlook for each of those tournaments.
Sure. Yeah, we're real excited to bring on those 2 new sports. So that puts us up at 28 in terms of the number of our sanctioned sports. And we announced that back in January that we were going to sanction those 2 sports. And then I think it was in April or early May that we announced that our girls wrestling state tournament, our inaugural girls wrestling state tournament, will be incorporated into the 3 days of the boys tournament at the Schottenstein Center at Ohio State. And that was a great thing we were able to do. We certainly had to slightly adjust, and we're still in the process of doing that, slightly adjusting the state tournament schedule. But that's the second weekend in March, and the girls will be on the center stage right along with the boys. So we're really happy about that. As you mentioned, boys volleyball is a spring sport, and we're going to do a release on this here at some point in the fall. But the number of boys volleyball teams has already doubled from where it was prior to the OHSA sanctioning it. I'm shocked. I didn't know that it would grow as fast as what we're seeing, but we were about 80 schools prior to OHSA sanctioning, and the last report I saw was that we were at 160 already. So schools, I think once they see OHSA governance involved, they are more likely to have their school pursue that sport. And we've seen that with lacrosse back in 2013 when we sanctioned lacrosse. This could end up being a similar situation to what we saw with bowling back in 2007. We sanctioned bowling in 2007, and it grew at a similar rapid pace, similar to what we're seeing with boys volleyball. so many small towns have a bowling alley. We're going to run the tournament now. School signs up a team. That's how it works in a lot of cases. So we're real excited about that. We don't have a state tournament venue yet for boys volleyball. Emily Mason is our volleyball administrator. She's doing site visits right now. I believe it will be somewhere in Central Ohio. That's where our site visits are happening. But we're most likely going to be at a university here in Central Ohio that will host our tournament. And that's the last week in May. Same week. I'm sorry, the second to last week in May. It's May 25th and 26th will be the boys volleyball tournament. That's the same week as our boys tennis tournament. So we'll get that tournament concluded there. It's right before Memorial Day. And then the week after that are the track and field, softball, and lacrosse state tournaments. And then the week after that is baseball. So yeah, already I have the calendar up on my wall. We're already looking through the whole school year. Things in the summer, we piece it all together. And then August 1st, fall sports practices begin and we're off and running. So we're pretty excited.
Well, even if the boys volleyball state tournament remains in Central Ohio, we know Greater Cincinnati will be well represented if history is any indicator of all the success and state titles that we've had in the past few years. So, Tim, always appreciate your time and perspective. Thank you very much, and all the best to you and everybody there at the OHSA staff in Columbus this entire school year.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate your coverage, and thanks for all you do for high school sports.
Thank you, Tim. Well, obviously, a lot going on with the OHSA. 712 teams playing 11-man football, as Tim mentioned, and it all gets started this week. Thursday night, we have a handful of games here locally, including the Skyline Chili Crosstown Showdown opening up, and then obviously everything gets going on Friday night. But I want to remind everybody this High School Insider podcast is presented by our local Chick-fil-A restaurants. Catering is Chick-fil-A's winning play of the game, perfect for your tailgate parties. Order today in the app. Well, continuing the theme of high school football, I had a chance to catch up with Mark Porter, who's the longtime director of ScoutingOhio.com. He also is a recruiting analyst for Bucknuts.com. He does a ton with Ohio State football. And he mentioned to me the proliferation of recruits from Southwest Ohio and why that's a key component for the Buckeyes' recruiting efforts. All right, Mark, another high school football season upon us. So many different storylines. Everybody starting fresh and new. And as I've gone out to a lot of these camps and practices, everything sounds so great. Teams are ready to go. You hear a lot of the cliche answers from a lot of coaches and players, but truly, I mean, there's we have some very talented teams and players to watch this year. I guess maybe your impression, just first of all, of Southwest Ohio and what you've noticed.
Yeah, you know what? Southwest Ohio, much like Columbus and even the Dayton area, are some of the best areas in Ohio for football. And it has largely to do with the population. More people means more talent, more kids, but a lot of Division I programs in those areas and Division II programs. If you're like me and you're up here in Youngstown, we don't have a Division I program in town anymore. We just have a couple Division II programs. So you guys are definitely the strength of Ohio. And you're representing Ohio very well. You have a bunch of Ohio State prospects at the top end of the recruiting spectrum in your area. Malik Hartford at Lakota West is a safety, and he's at the top end of being safeties in the country, let alone Ohio. Austin Sierraveld at Lakota East is another big-time offensive lineman. He's going to play tackle or maybe guard for the Buckeyes. If you look at Jordan Marshall for Moeller, you have a running back that's absolutely spectacular, had a great sophomore season. He's going to be one that I think people down there start to fall in love with because he's going to be in a premium position at a premium school, and a household name should follow very shortly. And then, of course, over in Winton Woods, you have Jermaine Matthews, a cornerback that is absolutely electric, and he plays press coverage and man-to-man, but there's not a lot of corners in Ohio that do that, and he's already efficient at both. So some really high-end prospects, and I'm missing a bunch of other guys going to other schools. I was a little Ohio State-centric there, but big time stuff down there in Southwest Ohio.
What can you say about this 2023 class that's made such a connection with the Ohio State University and maybe the coaching staff? And is there something in particular? Do you find a theme there?
Not really. There is no connection. It's weird that most of the Ohio State class is coming from Southwest Ohio. One kid from Findlay, Luke Montgomery, and an Arvell Reese just committed from Cleveland, but you got the bulk of them right down there. And if they were all at the same school, or they all had the same trainer, or they all had some connection like that, I'd be able to throw you a quick bone like that. But for the most part, they're just the most talented at their position in the state of Ohio. And all of those programs I mentioned are places you would go to get developed, where there's competition in the weight room, there's competition on the field, there's competition at the lower levels. So it's bringing out the absolute best that a player may have to offer. And a lot of those players are very well developed products.
You talk about recruiting, and people talk about the transfer portal, the COVID year. You've heard this ad nauseum for many months now, but when you kind of look at 23 and beyond, maybe getting into 24, I mean, what do you see, I guess, the direction of recruiting and where it's going right now in terms of the high school players themselves?
Yeah, so we'll talk about the COVID bubble a little bit and what that actually is. In Ohio, about 125 kids get an FBS Division I scholarship a year, and that number has been as high as 150, maybe down to 115. But that's pretty much what we do in Ohio every year. During COVID, when they gave seniors an extra year to stay in college and scholarship them an extra year, the colleges didn't need to take as many freshmen because they had some seniors that were sticking around. So instead of taking 20, they probably took 15. In Ohio last year, we had 75 kids go Division I. So we were down about 50 kids. So that really hurt a lot of high school players. The transfer portal, where colleges could go get a ready-made player, they think, out of the portal rather than take a high school player, that also hurt that number. So there's a little bubble where we've dipped down. So if you were the class of 2022, you kind of took it in the chin. 2023, there's going to be a recovery, but I don't know if we're going to get to 125, 130, 150. Hopefully we get over 100. But it seems like the colleges are recruiting the high school again. They have access to the kids at camps in the summer where they didn't really have as much access to COVID. So those things are going on. And then now the next thing is, name, image, and likeness money, where not only do you get a scholarship, but you're going to get some type of package to work for a company or do something to get actual cash and money to help you out. And a lot of these players down south that want to come to Ohio State are pretty much saying, like, how much are you going to give us to get my family up here for all the games every weekend? And that's kind of like the base starting point for what's going on out there in this world. And of course, players are being bought out of the portal, and there's $1 million deals given to quarterbacks at Tennessee and other things. So, how far we go down this NIL rabbit hole, but that is going to change the face of college football. And you can see the conferences realigning to get a couple power conferences where you're going to see, like an NFL, like a NFC East and an NFC, or a NFC and an AFC, or where there's going to be two dominant conferences, and there'll be a playoff system. And is that what's best for college football? To be seen, or to be watched.
Does anything surprise you anymore with college athletics?
No, if you can tell by talking to me, I'm pretty pragmatic. Hey, this is what it's going to go. Let's bend to it. Let's go with it. And I mean, obviously, I only get one vote, and it doesn't matter, very much. So, yeah, this thing's going to happen, and we're going to watch it. And I think you're going to see guidelines be put up like what the NFL did. So there is a fairness to it. Maybe there is some sort of salary cap or some type of full disclosure on what players are actually getting. Because right now, you really don't see anything documented as to what these players are signing when they get these deals. And some of the deals are flashy, like an NFL deal, lots of millions of dollars. But if you really read it, not all of it's guaranteed. You got to do certain things to get it. And, the quarterback that came from Texas, Quinn Ewers, to Ohio State, he got a big deal to come here, and he left, a few months later to go back to Texas. Well, do they have to pay him still? So obviously that deal was, torn up, and there were things in there that, hey, if you leave, all bets are off. And, so that needs to be, I guess, watched and oversight. And there's a lot of things that could help that NIL process. But right now, you're going to see a couple of years of wild, wild west and a lot of controversy.
How do you go about finding the market value of a high school player when you're going through the recruiting process and you're visiting college campuses? I mean, how does one go about knowing how to negotiate even the first step of that?
Yeah. Okay. Let's ask that question to NFL teams who have millions of dollars and dozens of scouts, and they can't get the first round of the draft right, where it's a 50% bust every year, pretty much. So with all that scouting and all that knowledge, they're spending money and setting it on fire. Now, when you have your salary cap of 150 million and you're an owner, you can pretty much assure that 30, 40 million you're going to set on fire every year to players that are hurt, don't show up, quit, or get bad. And it's going to drive you insane, or it's just part of the game. College football has not experienced that yet. All these guys that they're giving money to out of high school look like they're going to make it, but every class that a college has is about a 50% bust rate too. So when these donors and these car dealerships or whoever are giving money to these things, they need return on investment. And when these kids bust, don't make the field, get hurt, and all that upfront money they've given them goes set on fire, you're going to see this thing equalize. So, but right now we're seeing all the shots being taken where everything's great, all these players are going to make it, no one's going to bust. So there's an optimism right now. And, a car dealership who gives a kid a car and says, okay, we're going to give you a car, but you got to come here and sign autographs a couple Saturdays. They're also doing the analysis. How many cars did we sell? Was it worth what we gave him versus how many times he was here versus so a lot of this stuff has to be worked out. A lot of times these kids are tweeting for gyms or apparel lines or stuff like that, like local businesses. And are those businesses getting bang for their buck? So definitely a nice thing for the players to actually be able to capitalize on who they are and what they've accomplished. But you're going to see some of the smarter schools like Ohio State take an approach where we're not going to give freshmen NIL money. We're not going to play that game, but we're going to promise you once you're a starter, here's what our starters are earning. And they're going to be able to give you a little pamphlet or say, okay, you got to play the long game with us. And, I know someone else might want to give you upfront money, but we have the back end money and we have the NFL draft picks and the NFL money you're going to get. So go with us. And that's the selling point right now. But in the next couple of years, this is all going to change. We can talk again.
I want to keep this kind of centered on the high school game itself, but obviously this past spring, NIL was overwhelmingly voted down by the OHSA membership. And first of all, were you surprised by that? Do you see that I guess tone changing any in the coming years here, or how do you make sense of this?
Yeah, for high school kids, that was really, I know they think they're great, and some of these kids get these 4 and 5-star ratings or at the top of the tree. But for most kids, that's not even a factor. No one's looking for their name, image, and likeness. So it was only for a few kids that would affect. And all of a sudden now you have kids that can be bought in high school where a rival town can say, hey, we have a car dealership over here that wants to give you guys $10,000 to come play over here. And now, transfers and things like that are going to be rampant where you're literally buying players to stock high school teams. So, yeah, if you don't want recruiting in high school and people using their businesses to, shift players to different high school teams, then you definitely don't want name, image, and likeness filtering its way down to the high school. And if those players are great enough that when they go to college freshman year, they'll get their money. So it's only affecting a few guys, but it's trying to prevent a lot of bad, I think, on you. Then, can you imagine like a Maslin or some of these schools that, automatically kids flock to, I'm not saying recruiting, but a lot of people are attracted to go play at a powerhouse like that. Now give some of those boosters in town the money to go dive into local schools around them and cherry pick the best players. It's really, that'd be a scary situation for smaller schools.
We're talking about obviously all the money and all the changes that have happened at the pro and college levels. The high school game, Mark, what's kind of your evaluation? Where does this stand? I feel like we haven't talked a lot of X's and O's, but just the high school game itself. How good is high school football still in the state of Ohio? How important is it? I feel like we kind of take that for granted, us in the media, but just come from your sense, and you travel around and visit a lot of communities. How important is the game?
There's a lot of ways to answer that, like factually with numbers or just my feel out there. And I feel, that concussion scare a few years back took numbers down, in a lot of schools, and there was a scare at the youth levels. And we saw that rise up, through the, varsity levels where things were thin. And, then some teams are thinking about going to 7-man football in Ohio because they don't have the numbers. So numbers with football in general are down is the bad news. But Ohio is not one of the states that's really taken that on the chin. We're a football-centric state. Our cheerleaders and our proms are all centered around football season. And, there's a lot of school spirit. And, if there's 700 Ohio high schools out there in Ohio, which there are, 500 or 400 are really churning around. There might be a couple hundred on Friday night the stands aren't full, or the Saturday afternoon games where the stands aren't full and those programs are struggling. And that is a real reality in Ohio. But at the top, at the Division 1, at the big time schools, yeah, those places are playing it as a high level as anywhere in the country, and you see that when they battle other teams from other states, and they did that across the country rivalry type stuff. But Ohio, it's Texas, California, Florida, Georgia, and Ohio would be the most powerful states if you wanted to rank Ohio high school football and put them in there. And a lot of those states have more numbers and they have spring football, so they have a few advantages to us. But Friday nights in Ohio, and I drive from town to town. Towns shut down on Friday nights for 10 weeks. It really is a unique thing. And if you get me and you get to go to some of the smaller schools like out in Southwest Ohio, up in that Coldwater area where the MAC plays, that's something everybody should see. Where the whole town is at those places, and it's Americana high school football on those nights, and really neat.
We had the return of the college combines in May. Obviously, no spring football here in Ohio, but do you have those up there in Northeast Ohio? Do you find those to be effective?
Yeah. The college combines, the ones that start in June, and that's where like Youngstown State, Kent State, Akron. I always push kids to go to those camps because that's where the dream comes alive. Every summer, I go to those camps and I see kids work out. And when it's over, you see about 5 or 6 kids get handpicked to go meet with the coach, and they get the scholarship. And if your film wasn't good enough to get you a scholarship, that's your next best way is to go, frankly, try out for a college. The other camps that are before that are more like warm up camps and press camps and hype camps. And I always say those are optional, but the college camps being back, I think, is when it's going to help boost our numbers because now they have the raw data on kids, the 40 times the height, the legitimate stuff, where during COVID, they didn't have access to all that stuff. So they felt more comfortable going into the portal and taking what they know and keeping seniors. So those camps coming back this summer, and they were at full strength. There were no COVID restrictions. Only people who had health problems were wearing masks at the camp, but everybody else was roaming around. And it was nice to see the energy back because I know kids look forward to that as their like last hope. And a lot of kids that are playing different positions, smaller schools, they need to get out there and compete at those things to prove themselves.
I'm sorry, Mark. I meant the one-day camps in May, like at schools. Do you guys have those up there?
Oh yeah, we do. Okay, yeah. So yeah, you know what? Southwest Ohio started that trend a couple years ago, where you had 3 or 4 or 5 high schools kind of combining, and they would do like a combine at like 7 a.m., 11 a.m., 2 p.m. Those are awesome, and those have trickled up here to North East Ohio. Some of the schools are doing them before we have a recruiting night. A lot of times there's a recruiting night where all the college coaches get together with the high school coaches earlier that day. A lot of the schools are having them up here. You see it over with Maslin having a pro day where they have all the college coaches come up. So I love that because the high school coaches have grabbed hold of that recruiting part of the process and said, hey, we're not going to let our kids go out and get charged $100 to run a 40-yard dash somewhere. We're going to have them do it at our place. We're going to bring in college eyeballs. So if there is a great time or someone has a great moment, a scholarship can be awarded right there from a guy who has the ability to do that.
I guess finally, what are your impressions of some of the teams there in Northern Ohio? Some of our teams, we had 3 teams in the state finals last year, Division 2, 3, and then 4. And I'm kind of curious, maybe what Hoban, Chardon bring back, Youngstown, Ursuline, just some of those teams.
Boy, you guys are worried about us up here in Northeast Ohio, but yeah, you just named kind of like a murderer's row. Ursuline's back, but they don't have their quarterback. So if they can find a quarterback, they're going to be very dangerous. I just saw Glenville scrimmage on Saturday, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say that pipeline is back. They got 3 or 4 type Ohio State level players and a bunch of other MAC level players and D2. So you're going to see Glenville make their run this year. I'm pretty confident in that. Akron Hoban got a transfer quarterback from West Virginia that could be the guy that helps them steer along a little further. And then, of course, Maslin's freshman quarterback's now a sophomore. That gives them a little pep. I wouldn't count out the St. Ed's. Their offensive line is as good as any in the state. They got Ben Robach, 2 Armstrong brothers that are twins. All those guys have Penn State Big Ten offers, Ohio State offers. The other offensive linemen are MAC to Ivy League level players. The tight end's got a Kentucky offer. So they are great up front, and they have a great quarterback that no one knows about. So watch out for St. Ed's. Same names you've always heard about up here. So yeah, I can't wait for the playoffs, but we got a lot of football between now and then.
Mark, what will you be doing? I guess maybe the first few weeks. What's kind of like your travel schedule like, and how can people follow you?
Yeah. First, you can get me on Twitter at Mark Porter. There's 2 underscores between Mark and Porter. And anytime you go to the scoutingohio.com, that's free for the kids to sign up. You can get a hold of me there. My travel schedule gets absolutely hectic. I try to see as many games as possible. So I'll go see games on Thursday, and I'll try to see 2 games. I'll go to the first half, and then during halftime, I'll try to go to another game and see another half so I can see 4 teams that night. I'm just there to bear witness, make sure kids are as big as they say they are, watch them run around and get an evaluation on them. But I'll do that again Friday night. And then Saturday during the day, I'll see day games at, either Akron City League or Cleveland City League or sometimes Dayton or even Cincinnati. And then watch games throughout the day. I love those shootouts down in Cincinnati where I can see a whole slate of games throughout a day and scout literally hundreds of kids in one day. And that goes on for about 17 weeks for me until, the wheels fall off the car.
Mark, always appreciate your time, perspective, and it's football season. It's here, and best of luck to you and everything you do this upcoming year.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me, and I appreciate your support, Mike.
Well, obviously, Mark travels the entire state of Ohio. He has a good perspective on Northeast Ohio, being from Youngstown, and you can tell some of the similar school names that will be in the mix as our teams prepare to look ahead. And it's really the kind of the non-conference portion of the schedule here the first few weeks, and it's going to be interesting. One of those games that I'm looking forward to on Friday night is Moeller at Maslin. This is the first matchup between those 2 storied programs since 2006. That game was played at then Paul Brown Stadium. While Moeller at Maslin is certainly a game to watch, our WCPO game of the week will take us to Westchester Township on Friday night. St. Xavier plays Lakota West. This is the 4th time these 2 programs have met, going back to the 2020 regional final there at Lakota West. Everybody knows that Firebirds took care of business, winning in that Division I regional semifinal against St. X at Princeton last year. And WCPO sports anchor Marshall Kramsky and myself will be out there to have all the coverage for you Friday night there in Westchester. The winner of that St. X and Lakota West game, it will say a lot. It's kind of a barometer from the early season to see where things go. As coaches like to say, that week 1 to week 2 is maybe the most significant telltale sign of progression for a team early in the season. So we'll be interested to see how the result turns out there on Friday night. We'll have all the coverage for you the entire weekend. Like I said, Thursday night, I'll be out at Bron Basovich Stadium as Roger Bacon plays host to Taft in a key matchup there, a non-league game that both teams are very talented. It'll be interesting to see what happens there at Roger Bacon. But that's all we have for you this week. Next week, I'll have a conversation with Joe Idle. He's the author of joeidle.com. If you follow high school football here in the state of Ohio, you know that he keeps track of the computer points standings, the scores and schedules from all over the entire state of Ohio. And I have some interesting perspective from Joe as he's starting his 23rd year covering high school football. And you want to find out what's on his bucket list, too. He's from Central Ohio, but he has some interesting perspective on what he would like to see in the upcoming season or 2. That's all we have for you this week. Thanks for watching and thanks for listening. We will talk to you next week.